I want to know, will there ever be a time in our lives where the hand check comes back?
There is a common misconception amongst casual fans that when the hand checking rule changed back in 2004, 2005, that just meant hand checking went away entirely and there was no longer hand checking in the game of basketball. That could not be further from the truth. If you went back to that season in 04-05 and you looked at every single game since then, I promise you, you will see hand checking in every single game. The reason why is because hand checking is just a human response to playing defense. As a defender, what is your goal? Your goal is to keep the offensive player in front of you and to keep them away from getting to the basket. So as such, if you get beat as a defender, what is just a normal reaction? Put your hand out. You get beat by a step, put your hand out to try and keep them in front of you because that is the goal. That is your job as the defender, the primary defender in that moment. Now, with that being said, what has changed is when you are allowed to hand check. Back in the 90s, back in the 80s, you were allowed to hand check at the point of attack, meaning as soon as the offensive player got the catch, you could have a hand on him, right? You could have a hand on a hip before an active dribble was even established, right? So immediately you can then guide the offensive player where you want them to go. What has changed is that's no longer allowed. What hand checking is allowed is as soon as that person gets downhill on you, there's almost always a hand on the offensive player. There's almost always a hand on the offensive player. You go to any NBA game, any high-level college game, even high-level high school games, hand checking is still very prevalent and very much a part of the game. Now, it may get called in certain instances, and more specifically, if you do start at the point of attack with a hand check, it may get called. Or if you get beat and then you establish a hand check later on, right? So let's say this, for example. Let's say you get beat by a step, you hand check, right? Let's say the offensive player swipes your hand away, and then you try and reestablish with your other hand. That second hand check may get called, especially if you push that person off their line of attack. But outside of that, hand checks are quite prevalent. And if you watch an NBA game for what it is, this last year's playoffs, regular seasons, you will see a ton of hand checking. Now, you can talk to me about the effort of the NBA and how consistently teams play defense, what have you. That's not in anything what I'm trying to talk about in today's video. The goal of this video is to, one, understand that hand checking still happens, and then two, to go over how an offensive player with today's rules and how hand checkings are called, how they're officiated, how can you beat these hand checks? To be honest with you, since defenders cannot reestablish hand checks after one gets beaten anymore, as an offensive player, you should be inviting hand checking. And I've seen a lot of young people, professional players and young players, people who are still developing, on a large spectrum, just not be comfortable with hand checks because they're not as used to seeing them as they once were. Now, the reason I say you should invite them is because it's a free ticket to get an advantage. And let me tell you what I mean. If a defensive player is being very aggressive and they want to get a hand on you, right? There's some defenders who just need to feel that physicality to feel like they can keep you in front and are doing their job, right? And those defenders are primed for the picking as an offensive player at getting blown by, getting toasted, right? Because they're being overly aggressive. They're trying to leverage their size, their physicality against you. Everything has pros and cons. And when you are being aggressive, it usually works to somebody who's not as skilled, not as doesn't have as high of an IQ, or maybe not as patient and speeds the game up on themselves, right? Maybe somebody who's just less experienced. But when you're experienced and when you've drilled this stuff 100 times, that sort of aggressiveness can very easily be used against the defender. So now that I've set this up for you guys, I want to go through what I mean. So again, as the defender, right, you're going to an offensive player, and they, as soon as you go to make a move, they put their hand on you. You as the offensive player should want that hand on you right there, whether you're going right or left. Because as soon as they put the hand on you, let's say they're sticking with you, this gives you an opportunity to create an advantage. And what that advantage is taking that hand as the defensive player has on you and ripping through it, right? Now, I've seen a lot of people say, if someone puts their hand on me, especially early, I'm just going to swipe it away. I want that hand on me as an offensive player. I want them to put it on me because what I'm going to do is after I start my drive, as soon as I feel that hand on me, I'm taking it and I'm using it as momentum. Now, it may not feel like much, but that 1 millisecond delay where they're stuck back here and you're ahead of them, allows you to get lower, get your shoulders even with their body, and now they're beat. You see guys like Luka Doncic, Shea, Kobe was great at this, Melo was great at this. They don't need to get entirely by you to beat you. All they need to do is get their shoulders down and even with you, and then you're toast. Because now, by using that momentum, ripping the hand by you, I'm even with you. Now I have control over everything. Now I have you on my hip, and I can take you in, do a step back. I can get all the way to the lane at a nice angle, keep you on my hip, fully extend out, hit a hook shot, you name it. The world is your oyster when you use these hand checks the way they're supposed to be used. I kid you not, my favorite move. I'm a simple guy, right? I'm not a bad guy. You know, I got a little some in terms of the footwork, but I try to keep the game as simple as possible. So me, I may just come at you, rip off two, get that step on you, and as soon as I feel that hand, get into you. Now it's the world is my oyster, right? Because I can get into the post, I can get to my two off my 2-foot bag, and do whatever needs to be done to get a bucket, right? Play the defense, see what the help side is doing, all that sort of stuff. But the point being in this video is that I see too many kids, too many young people shy away from contact, shy away from hand checking. Hand checking is going to happen, and it's going to continue to happen forever, right? As long as basketball is a sport that's being played at as high of a level as it's currently being played at, it's always going to be a part of the game in some capacity because it's just human reaction. Use it as the offensive player to get downhill and create an advantage, especially because, again, the way the rules are set up right now, once you beat one hand check, there's not another one coming, because as soon as they push you off your point of attack, off your line drive, then it's a foul, right? But that first hand check is rarely ever called, and usually it's invited by referees because they never call it. So this whole video, the whole point of it is just for you guys to hopefully provide some clarity on how you can take a hand check, use it in your favor. I don't think you catch and swiping it away immediately is the thing to do. I want you to invite these hand checks, right? Invite these hand checks, because as soon as you rip through, it's a momentum shifter, right? You take that hand, you swipe it away, and when you get really good at it, now this is a little bit of an old man trick. When you get really good at it, once you get body to body with somebody, you tug on that jersey a little bit, and you're downhill and you're off to the races. Trust me, I'm a slow-footed guy. If you watch my film, my tape, you'll see I was very slow-footed, very methodical, used my footwork and used my size to get by people and get to the spots on the court that I wanted to get to. So I was never a guy who could just rip through and get by you in a breeze. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have that athleticism, that foot speed, and that quickness. But what I did have is my size, and I did have strategic moves like using hand checks against people to get wherever I wanted to get you on the court. That was never a problem for me. Watch a guy like Joe Ingles. If you're familiar with him, he's an Australian player. He's currently still on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Towards the end of his career, came into the NBA late, so he hasn't been in the league for a long time. But when he was on Utah, when he was the primary three-man on Utah with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, he literally looked like the slowest player in the NBA. But he got downhill whenever he wanted to get downhill. And that is because of little tricks like this. He understood, one, my jumper is lethal. So if you step out and you if you don't respect the jumper, it's going up and you're going to get 3 to the eyeball every single time. But now that you respect my jumper, okay, now I'm playing it. You want to put a hand on me? I'm ripping through. And he had all the tricks, right? All the little subtle tricks to help you get by people. So this is something that may be more advanced, right? Maybe not for a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old, but 18-year-old who's in varsity getting ready to go to college, this is a move that you can add to your game to really expand on and grow it, right? Especially as you're phasing into higher levels with more athletic guys, with more talented guys, with more just overall skill, then it's going to be harder to score on, right? Take tricks like this, use them to your favor, right? Because as the game gets more difficult, these subtle adjustments to your game can make profound differences. I'm not kidding you. Don't ever let somebody put their hand on you without using it against them. Invite it, but make sure you use it in your favor as the offensive player and dictate where you want to get on the floor. I hope this video helped you guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Peace.